Everybody else ready?
You'll figure it out.
Go for the mic when you say that.
Okay, it's kind of weird. Calling the meeting to order?
Yeah.
All right, let's call the meeting to order today.
7:03.
Okay. And Don is not here. Dennis?
Dennis won't be here.
Dennis
Can't
is not here. Okay. Great. So just read through the meeting notes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Minutes,
This is exciting for me.
Minutes.
Okay, so open meeting 7:03 PM. Thank you, Jackie. The first item is approval of the outstanding minutes from November 4th. Does anybody have any, should we review it or?
I did send them out by email in advance, but they're
I
printed in your packet as well.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that, or should we go ahead and?
I did read them and found no issues, so I move that we approve the minutes.
Second that.
Great. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so the second item is review applications and upcoming schedule. We've got the community house, we've got the bench, we've got town hall debt, and then we've got the town hall laserfiche, plus amendment. And we can just go through each application.
It's up to you. There will be presentations on Monday from the town hall on the debt and the laserfiche, as well as the open space committee on the bench. So we will have formal presentations Monday. It's up to you. If anybody had questions for those folks making those presentations in advance that you'd like me to ask them to include or anything like that, but it's really up to you how you guys want to proceed tonight.
Okay, any suggestions?
I have some questions about the laserfiche thing. Just because I don't know what the standard would be for such a system. It seemed quite expensive to me, especially the yearly fees. So it would be really helpful to know what the alternatives are, if any. Also, I noticed that I don't know, I may be saying too much. We can always hold some of what I'm saying till Monday, but I was concerned that they applied for the full amount, and also I wondered, since it's a state mandate, does the state offer any possibility of partial funding? Are there any grants to be applied for? But yeah, I didn't know, would having our own server be a better way to have these documents stored? Or I just really
Sure.
don't know the ramifications of having this outside service, which is going to only get more expensive with time.
I guess I remember going into the library many, many moons ago and using the fiche machine.
Right.
It seems like an antiquated technology, perhaps, or maybe it's been updated somewhat.
Right, it's probably been updated, but to what extent, I don't know.
I know,
Yeah.
it's kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
Well, since the whole RFP process was a little bit maybe light, I mean, I would like to have seen if they reached out to other firms to make a bid for this as well. because
Absolutely, yeah.
It seems like we only have one proposal here, and that's what we're weighing in on. Whether it's high or low, I don't really know.
Right.
But it'd been nice to have seen a few firms get invited into the process, which
Yeah.
maybe they did, maybe the town did, and we're just not aware of it.
Mhm.
Would have been nice to see those other bids maybe spread across a little sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I make one clarifying for that? Because I'm going to make note of all of your questions
Yep.
for the presenters on Monday. I'm going to send them an email tonight with these questions.
Okay.
But on the procurement side, I can't answer that question. So for the cost of this type of project, it's actually under the level of $10,000. So it's just considered sound business practices. And
So
so,
you need one.
well, no, you do a couple, but it's not like there's not even a formal written email for a quote. It's just sound business practices. So, but any other questions I've been tracking, so I'll get all of these to Anthony Ansaldi, the town administrator, who'll be here
Yeah.
on Monday.
I mean, the other thing I would just say is, I've been on this committee for a long time, and I believe we funded some
For the town clerk.
for the town clerk, right? And this did not involve laserfiche. And the same thing with the museum, with the Conant collection. They had a scanner and they did all the scanning, but there was no ongoing, outside service as far as I know. unless they just didn't apply for that to us, and so we don't know about it.
There's the document center in Andover too, it's, which would be more cost efficient, outsourcing
Uh-huh.
and taking it to the document center.
Oh, so what is the document center? Maybe?
Well, they take care of archival materials
Mhm.
and preserve archival materials for various organizations.
Mhm.
And, there's also going to be the question of, we need employees who are going to be doing this work.
Mhm.
too. And so a salary would need to be built into this.
Yes,
Which is the addendum for
Okay.
$20,000.
Oh, I
which
see. Hmm.
I looked at the initial and said, oh, 6,900, okay, that's reasonable, and then,
No.
oh, another 20,000, oh, now we've moved it to another ballpark.
Yeah, definitely, right.
But it is mandated, so.
Right, but
It needs to be done.
But there might be a
Is the
more
method
economical way
yeah.
to do it.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Any other thoughts, questions? I know Jackie had sent an email or a couple weeks ago saying if we had any questions on any of the applications to send them to you. Did you get those? And
didn't get anybody's.
No, that's not
Sorry,
true.
I didn't realize.
Well, I got some from you, and I passed them to Missy, and I answered the ones that I could. And then,
But you didn't get none.
yeah, so I got Pat and Natalie, which I knew was coming, but I did not get anyone above and beyond Pat and Natalie.
oh, okay. All right.
So I do have those, but sorry, we talked about it subsequently, so I apologize.
Should we spend time now, maybe 10 minutes, just going through the applications together so that we have that under our belts before?
Yeah, it was
Yep,
probably-
okay.
probably a good
So
idea.
I've got Laserfish. Anything else before I change paper?
Nope.
Okay.
No. Okay. So let's look at, Jackie, would you suggest that we start with the community house?
I want to clarify that the community house is not a new application.
Right.
That's just a request for a change of language. By any means, whatever order folks want to go in, that's just a clarification on that one.
Okay.
Go with Community house, sounds great.
You want to just start with that issue? Okay. All right.
I would like to know what the duration is for what we agreed to with the Wenham Museum, because I think this is kind of dovetailing into the arrangements we
Definitely,
made for
yeah.
the term for the Wenham Museum's historic preservation grant
Mhm.
that CPC weighed in on. Particularly sensitive topic to me, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but
Yeah.
our church was offered monies that were in perpetuity, and we declined those funds as a result of that language, which the town at that point was inflexible changing. So I have a little bit of a personal axe to grind on this one, but I just think that the community house should be treated as fairly as they can be with, in vis-a-vis what terms were provided to the Wenham Museum. So if that's 19.6 years or some other term, I would like to know what that is.
Right, so,
Maybe we need to revisit the language that we're putting out there and look at the dollar amount and the years that we're proposing. In perpetuity was kind of the boilerplate that was sent to us from the attorney, and we
Counsel,
never.
right.
Counsel,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
well, also I thought the threshold for getting into complexities that we didn't want to get into was 30 years with the state.
Right.
And so the term I heard the BOS use was 29 years, not 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know what actually happened. We'd have to look up what happened.
I can
with the
get that for
museum.
you for Monday's meeting, absolutely.
And Jackie, just to clarify, what is the power of this committee over this decision? Because I know that the council is ultimately making the language. What is our role here?
So council is only approving the language by form, so the content of the recommendations are required by this committee. Even the selectmen cannot put a CPC recommendation on the warrant without a recommendation by this committee. So the content is what we really need from the CPC. And then what we typically have done in years past is after folks have determined what the content is, we've gone to council, gotten the form of the motions, and then brought the form back and done a final version of the recommendations vote with the final form. So that's how we've done it in the last few years. it's up to you if you just want to do the content votes and then say, town council can deal with form and send questions to Natalie, and then you can kind of make a call if you want to bring it back to the full board if it's more of a large scale decision. So that's a style choice folks can make.
So if we hypothetically take the community house's ask for changing the language and the conditions, and we all say yes, will town council then change it, or do they stick with our recommendation?
So they would change the form based on what you are asking them to do. So if your form, reduces like a condition or increases, changes the content of a condition, then we'd get the language from them to do so legally. It's really just to make sure that the motion is legally sound. That's really their role, and to make sure that we're protecting the town if anything were to happen.
So did they express a term for the monies that the Wenham Museum received? Was there an opinion rendered for that, or just language that was drafted to,
I think,
to,
I don't
to meet
remember
the
exactly,
needs of
but
the
I thought
CPC?
that language was settled upon.
Mm-hmm.
Council advice,
Yeah.
council opinion?
That's what I
Well,
recall.
and
Well, First Church, I think, was the first time we had this language come up.
Come up.
So
Right.
Was the museum prior to First Church, or was it the same, it was after First Church?
It was after.
So I believe it's in perpetuity was in there, because I don't think it.
Right, and we negotiated it down.
But then it got right, that's what happened, right?
Mm-hmm. To 29 instead of 30, because after 30, it becomes
I think
a
that's
different
still a
situation. I can't remember specifically
Well,
what
it's something
happened.
with the state. That was the only.
Right,
It
it
goes to the
was.
legislature.
It was,
compelling reason, I thought.
Escalate.
it pushes it up into a different level in the courts or whatever, so.
if folks would like, I can get the grant agreement language between from both the First Church case and the Wenham Museum case, and get that emailed over to folks if they want to take a look at that. I know we have
That'd be helpful.
a short timeline for the next meeting being on Monday, but
Right.
I can do that tonight, and that way folks will have the weekend to
That'd be helpful,
take a
Jackie.
look.
Thank you.
I'll just get those grant agreements for you both.
That'd be great. Yeah, just even a little like case summary too, to start with next week, so that everyone, because even for me, I'm like piecemealing the story a little.
Sure.
Thank you.
What I can try to do is pull out the selectmen's packets because they were the final executor of the grant agreements with each of those institutions. So I'll try to see what I can potentially grab some BOS minutes regarding those discussions, maybe with Catherine's assistance. She can help me narrow down when we were working on that.
Yeah. I mean, not to overdo it, but I just wonder if we had any input from Stuart Saginaw, or like what the other towns are doing with something like that.
I did reach out to Stuart, as the board had requested in the fall, regarding the situation with the community house. And the challenge being that this is really a local decision, which is a phrase that we've heard from them before when we've asked for advice, and to refer to our municipal council, which we have been doing. But I think, Stuart's main advice in regards to the situation with the community house was that if they were going to be seeking a change of the funding amount or the funding source, that's when we would have received a new application. But because this was just an amendment to the conditions of the money and not the amount of funding, that's where we had said that they just, based on what Stuart had said, just needed to submit the letter. So he felt that because town meeting had made that language, only town meeting could take it away, but it was a local decision as to the content of that language.
Right, so even though they're required to have, be on the National Register in order to have historic status in order to apply, this condition has nothing to do with CPA.
This condition has to do with that, from my recollection of the discussions that we had last year. So the National Register, while a list that, shows your historic merit, the National Register actually places no protection on the
Right.
building.
I know that,
Yeah, so I think that's the thought process that had come into play,
I see.
not only on this, but the other prior to grants, was that if the subject property was going to receive public funds for historic preservation and then no longer, be a historic building, they didn't have, is about protecting the town's financial interest in the historic preservation by maintaining the historic preservation.
Yeah.
So that's, your decision to weigh.
Okay.
Great. All right, so what about the bench application? Did everybody familiar with that?
Well, this isn't new either, really, is it? I mean, this
No.
It is
came-
new.
Came before, oh.
Well,
We had a different bench somewhere else.
Oh, it's just a different location, but the same
location.
theory, principle.
It's a new bench. In a di-
Sorry.
It's on the canal.
So the Salem Beverly Water Supply Board said we couldn't put it on the lake on Cedar Street, that it has to go to the canal.
Okay. And which side of the canal is it going on?
On the
wrong
right.
side.
I didn't say-
On the right, that's the
Right
side that you
facing
can't
north.
walk all the way down because there's
Exactly.
that water
Right.
ditch?
There
Right.
should be a map in the
Until
application.
somebody
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
proposes a bridge, which we could do.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we did ask for a map this year as a clarifier.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and then there's the town hall debt, which we have the letter from the town administrator thanking the packet, right?
The letter goes with the Laserfiche, that was
Oh, right,
the
okay.
Laserfiche amendment.
Oh, yes, okay.
Town hall debt is,
Yeah, I don't mean to be so blunt, but that just seems to be such a rubber stamp, I don't know.
No, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
just, you know,
not
we've done it
much.
for years, we'll continue doing it, and
it does go down every year.
Goes down, that's right.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Either comes here or out of the general fund.
Yeah.
Sadly, it still goes on for 7 years, that's the only thing.
We're on the tail end. Yeah, we're coming down the mountain
Seriously.
on that one.
You can see the horizon.
Yeah.
It was a refinance.
Refi. It was a
uh,
Okay.
Yeah, it was a refi.
So that sounds like
several
that's
years
all the
ago, cut the
applications, right?
term.
That's it.
Okay.
Good.
And the next item on the agenda is project updates, if any. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm skipping one. Review, discussion, and potential vote on late application from the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust was not and will not be submitted. Oh, we're skipping.
So I apologize.
It's okay.
They had indicated that they were going to submit a late application. We, as you know, Natalie, you and I both received the written notification that they potentially would be submitting an application late for the CPC's consideration. But I found out today it was confirmed from Margaret Hoffman, our planning coordinator who works with the trust, that they will not be submitting. But unfortunately, the agenda had already been posted before I learned that.
Okay.
All right. That makes it easy. Okay, and then the next item is project updates, if any.
So on Monday, when Missy Barry is here to talk about the bench, she'll also be giving you an update on the trail mapping project that was funded last year, as well as the action plan items that are being completed from the open space plan that the CPC had funded a few years ago. We also, I'm sending out the project reports to our other open applicants, and I've actually provided a list for you in the financial update of all of the current open projects that are happening. I will say I did meet with the Enon 1 group, and they're just working on some final signage to be installed this spring, and then that project will be closed out. The Fairfield and Main Street Cemetery projects are both still active, which is great. I'm working to find, we've got a couple small dollar projects from years past that I'm still trying to track down who actually initiated those projects. They're very, very old, so I have minimal records, but we're going to get those small dollar amounts closed out. And then I'm looking for some updates from the museum on their 2 projects. I will let you know that Maple Woods is back before the Zoning Board of Appeals. They were in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for public hearing on January 15th, and they'll be returning to the ZBA again for a continuance on February 20th. So you can check in with that ZBA process if you're interested in more. Habitat has received their demolition permits, and if you've gone by, it's quite a different site from what it was beforehand. The trail Missy will be here to talk about, so I won't get too deep into that. And then the town hall debt obviously will get paid as it does every year. But that's pretty much the summary of our outstanding projects. So you'll notice it's a bit smaller than what we've seen in the past. I spent a good deal of the summer closing out old projects and getting the money returned. So that's where you'll see a little more in the CPA fund than we've had in years past. So it's just, keeping up with their reporting and getting things closed out with the DOR. I didn't know if there was any projects people wanted, any project applicants to come in and speak, though. That was my other goal of tonight, was to see if there's anyone you wanted a more formal update from this list of applicants.
I I just had a conversation with the superintendent this evening, and I'm not sure if this is the place to discuss it or in item number 7, but since we have funded the schools before, she would love to come in and meet with us. So we could bring her and her staff under the guise of discussing the Bucher and the Winthrop projects. And then also bring that to another conversation on what's coming up, what do we have in the future. And I explained some of the bad blood, and she was well aware of the bad blood between the schools and the CPCs, both Hamilton and Wenham, and wants to,
What bad blood? We've
Winthrop
given them money.
playgrounds, not using the rubber surface after it was.
I know, and that's a tragedy, because that's what the problem was. It wasn't, the application didn't come from the district.
Right.
It came from the Friends.
Yeah.
And once the district got the money, they did what they wanted, and we can't repeat that mistake.
Exactly.
And you know, as a mother of a disabled child,
Yeah.
having full access to a playground, that was their selling point. This is a playground that is open on off-school hours to all disabled children. Well, guess what? It's not. So you want to call that bad blood? I just call it a fact. That's what happened.
Well, it's kind of poisoned the well between, and I went to the school committee, and
It poisoned their well, not ours.
Well, it didn't it poisoned the communications between the groups. We need to work together.
Right, and it's a lesson learned, in my opinion. We were dealing with the wrong people. We should have been dealing directly with the district. And in my estimation, we've given the district a lot of money. That should have been something that they budgeted individually for all these projects themselves.
This is why they would like, she would like to come in. with
I
her
think that's
team.
terrific, but
But
she
we-
also needs to understand the bad blood is not on the part of the CPC. We gave money to a group that asked for something for a playground that was ADA accessible for all children. They decided to cut corners and put down some kind of mulch, and their response was, well, if we don't have any kids in wheelchairs right now, but if we do, we'll get one of those special beach wheelchairs with big wheels.
Which is actually a violation of ADA.
Exactly.
But now we have a new superintendent, and I went to that.
I just think we need to be aware of the wording we're using. The bad blood was on their part, because they're the ones who messed up.
Oh, I agree, and I went to
And we
them and
gave
expressed
them the
that.
money.
And Mr. Sands and
And what
Dr.
was the
Harvey-
problem with Bucher?
This is a little, sorry.
Oh, there is no problem with Bucher, but it's at a school project, a school site, so we could bring the schools in to discuss those two projects.
Well, they need to,
Just
come up
to
with
give
an
us-
application first, I
No,
think.
no, Bucher's already done, the playground.
Oh, I know
We've
it's
already-
done.
we've already funded it.
I'm
But this is-
2
this is-
minutes away from it.
This is a project update, so they can come in and update us and say Bucher was done.
Well, I'd love for them to come in
And then- and then-
explain to us how Winthrop's handicap playground's working out.
Well,
those
again,
people-
it wasn't this
Yeah,
administration.
it's a different
It
administration.
doesn't matter, it's still their playground.
It is, but this gives them a chance to address that with us and maybe clear the air with us.
Right.
And then further say, okay, going forward,
It's just concerning to me, as I am a big fan of the ADA, and the fact that this playground on the weekends and off-school hours is not ADA compatible. It's a problem for me.
I mean, I think your point is valid, and I think, the interest of the CPC as it stands now is to forge new relationships with the renewed, people that are seated, and, I guess this is sort of unrelated, but maybe not. It's a question for me. What happens if, in a case, and this is a case that is an example of the spec of the project was not actually met? Like, what is the process that the CPC goes by? And do we have wording in our contractual agreement with the parties that if you don't, do we sort of have a quality assurance for all of this money that we give out? And do we have a review process where we can say, yep, they did this, yep, they did that, yep, they did that, in place? Or do we not do that?
The problem with the Winthrop was that the application didn't come from the district. It came from the Friends, and that was a mistake. Because the Friends were advocating for their school, rightfully so. They put in an application, we gave them the money went to the district had a heyday. That's how it worked.
And the applicants were very clear that they were very strongly in favor.
Of course they were,
the
but they
rubber
had no
surface.
control. They had
Exactly.
no control.
So maybe the rule for us is we only fund the person or the entity that is actually doing the
Well,
project?
we
Is that-
discussed that
is that
when
kind of
Harriet
what
was
the
chair,
rule
and
is?
that was kind of what we decided.
Okay.
We no longer, friends groups that have no control over the money, they're just fundraisers.
Yes.
God bless them, but they have no control over the money they raise.
It's basically whoever has site control
Oh.
is the applicant.
So in
Right.
other words, in a situation like
Or-
that, the Friends would have to
Get
go to
approval from the
And
district.
say, you know, we have this amount of, you know, we have 75% of what's needed to make this playground. You need to apply
Right.
to the CPC if you want the playground.
Right, they
And
can
then
fundraise all
just
they
say,
want.
Screw you, we don't want a playground,
Right.
which is basically what their attitude was.
But on the
So-
Bucher playground, it was actually
That was
the
different.
school committee came before us as opposed to
That
the
was very
Friends.
different.
Yeah, and I don't know there was any animosity over that.
No,
No,
there
not at
wasn't, but that was the subsequent playground after.
Right, so they
was
knew
done.
that they, you know,
No,
think
even
it
the
was-
they had
principal
to be
made a
responsible.
presentation, came
Yes.
personally and made a
Right.
presentation.
No, it's
Is
two
this-
different stories.
Is
Yeah.
this process outlined in our CPC bylaws?
So we don't have, we just have the bylaw that establishes CPC. What this process is outlined in, so since, particularly with the Winthrop School being an example, that's where we started establishing the grant agreements that we now do. And that's where we also, if you look at the motion language from those, that era of the CPC motions versus the ones we've done over the past couple of years. That's why we've gotten so stringent with what we're including in the motions, so that way the person who receives the money is bound by town meeting, because town meeting is not only approving funding, but approving the context of the motion. So that's why our motions are a little more dense than they once were, because that allows the CPC to bind the institution or the applicant to doing the grant agreement with the Board of Selectmen, which provides the town some fiduciary safeguards. So we, with all of the projects that we had receive funds last year, they all have grant agreements in place unless they're a town entity. We don't, the Open Space Committee didn't have to do a grant agreement with the Board of Selectmen over those funds as a town, department. But any outside institutions now are subject to the grant agreements, and we make sure that that motion language is included, that, that the CPC is recommending town meeting authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a grant agreement. So that's why that protection got put into place, was because we were trying to figure out a way to, still fund projects and get things done, but also provide the CPC with a little bit more teeth and grounding, so that the grant agreements are a best practice recommended by the coalition, and a lot of communities utilize them. So that's why we started doing those.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I think it would be great to invite her and whoever else wants to come and have just a genuine general starting point for any future potential things. Yeah, good job.
Oh, thank you.
Any other project updates or?
So that would be on Monday as well?
I think so. I think that.
I could ask.
Okay.
I did not put a date
We're already
out there.
posted for Monday because
Oh,
of
we
the
are?
deadline,
Oh,
and
okay.
we do
Okay.
have, our town meeting funding recommendations deadline. So I was gonna ask if if folks wanted to book an additional meeting for non-town meeting this year related business.
Is now a time to talk about that potential? Is this a good segue into that, or?
It's your meeting.
Okay.
Is that jumping down
So-
to item
Yeah,
7?
you're allowed, Madam Chairwoman, to move to a different item and
So
jump around.
let's jump, just because it seems pretty linear. Patrick and I had talked about, or actually, no, we discussed it in the meeting in November together in our meeting, about maybe meeting with partner organizations and entities to see if we can identify synergies or common best practice benefits to opening communication with, like, Hamilton CPC, even reaching out to the state level office and becoming more familiar with the people that are working there. And Patrick, you had reached out to Hamilton CPC. They were very receptive and eager to have that discussion, and wanted to then bring that back. Did you want to?
Sure. So I had discussed with a couple members that we have common interests, so it would be good the last time we had a joint meeting was for the pool. And we don't have anything really on the docket, the shared interest, the community house, I would say, but something, where we can just get together and meet, greet, and discuss upcoming projects. And they were very amenable to that. And I think it's important that we meet with them. They, you know, they're a sister town. And they thought it was great. They proposed March 19th, which I know KP Law wants to do March 19th as well.
And can I actually add an update on that? So KP, we had talked about KP Law coming in for a CPA finances funding statute night. KP Law is now representing the town of Hamilton as well.
Oh, wow.
So on March 19th, we are very.
convenient.
This is going.
What I wanted to ask the board, you know, there's no issue with us inviting them to the training. So we do have some staff members here in Town Hall. We have some new folks in the finance department that would like to come to the training. But with your all okay, then I'd like to invite Hamilton to attend that training as well for those interested. I know their staff person recently retired, and they potentially may, I don't know if they have new people on their board that might be interested, but, so, I don't know if you'll have enough time to have the training and have a meeting that night, but that could be another nice, way to come together as two groups, is to invite them to the training if that's of interest.
That is March 19th?
Correct. That was the night we could get from town
What time
council.
would that be?
I would presume sometime with a start time between 6 and 7.
And so
That would be in Hamilton?
No, it would be here.
I'll be here.
It'd be here at, I think we're shooting for 7.
March 19th for 7? Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to sort of have our pre-meeting to just even meet and greet, right? Because we don't actually have an agenda with them. It's just like, hey, what have you been up to? Nothing. Here's what I've been up to. Like there's,
I know what they've been up to, but anyway.
would a half hour before that commences sound okay for everybody? Or is that, do I have magical thinking there with trying to make too much happen? Even
Oh,
just a.
So what was that?
A half hour, maybe.
Half hour, like
If
6:30?
the training starts at 7, maybe we can start and have a sort of meeting for half an hour with just us, or is that too much? Does
I
that have
thi-
to be televised?
Barb, you have HDC that night at 6, so
Oh,
you're
boy.
already,
Oh,
sorry.
I think there are a lot of.
I'll blow it
pending-
off.
Pending items that could.
We'll both, all 3 of us will.
you're gonna be sick that
I
hour
won't.
of that day?
Yeah, just be in the first floor instead.
I think this could actually be a fairly lengthy discussion. You know, we've got
Ah, okay.
the tennis courts, the turf field,
Yeah.
Okay.
the community house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Joint things, yeah.
I think we've
Okay.
got a number
It's a
of things.
full-bodied meeting?
It very well could turn into, oh, well, what about this? And, you know,
Okay.
what about that? I think there's a lot of potential.
So that brings us full circle, because actually, I know that we have our last meeting scheduled for Monday, and then you had said, do we want to have an extra meeting, right? Is everyone okay with having an extra meeting? I know that, like, historically, we've all, like, met just for the applications, and this would be considered an extra, but I think all of us have the best interest of the committee in
We've
mind.
had extra meetings before,
Oh, we have? Okay.
I think.
So this is not so atypical?
Yeah, just
Okay.
my HDC problem. But anyway,
On the 19th.
right.
Natalie, would you be envisioning the additional meeting including both the superintendent as well as our colleagues from the Hamilton CPC and putting that in one meeting? An hour
I
for one,
wasn't.
an hour for the other?
We could. What do you think, Patrick? I mean,
I think after talking to Dr. Kuchenberger, I can't speak for her, but I know she is looking to address both groups. She actually did address the Hamilton CPC.
Yeah, that makes sense,
Um,
actually.
So I could give her a call again and see if she'd be amenable to that. I can't imagine her not being.
that sounds great.
Is it gonna put too much on the plate? I don't think so. I think
Yeah,
it could lead to a really productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
May I make one suggestion?
Yes.
I would say maybe let's circle for March, because both the superintendent, you as a CPC, and the Hamilton CPC have their town meeting business to conduct by the end of February. And so I know, like, for example, Wenham Town Hall is very, very booked during the month of February due to that. So I would just perhaps suggest March for that symposium of minds.
And she actually said that
yeah.
February was all budget.
Oh, perfect, yeah. Just keep that in mind.
So then, Patrick, do you want to
I can get in touch with both groups.
find a
and-
date and then we can figure it out that way? Is
Yeah,
that okay?
if
or-
you can find a date, Patrick, I'll get a room.
Okay,
Just let me know.
great.
Great.
Ideally, are you contemplating pre-19th or post-19th? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know.
Doesn't really matter. You don't want dates from us, though, do you? I mean,
Potentially.
Any dates that don't work might
we
be
just kind
helpful.
of be there at
Yeah.
the square, or we're gonna try to get
Well,
a few dates?
we gotta get as many people in the room as possible. I don't know.
Yeah, to have a,
So maybe I could ask the schools and Hamilton for acceptable dates and us for
That's the
acceptable
best
dates.
way to
and-
go.
And see if we can merge calendars.
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah. Patrick,
Do
I
my
would
best.
give you one note
Tough,
that
yeah, it
the
is.
last
Yeah.
week of March, the warrant hearing will be on the Monday. It's just because Natalie will be there as well as,
On what Monday?
the last Monday of March will be the warrant hearing.
The 30th?
Yeah, it's the 30th, yeah. Just as a night to keep out, because I
yeah.
know folks like to attend the warrant hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll happen in both towns. So,
That's, what date is that again?
Monday, the 30th
30th.
of March.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to add one to your list of no-goes.
I think I have a painful dentist appointment that night, which would be more fun.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other project updates?
Another
Yeah.
potential meeting. So I spoke with, we had Chris Lapointe from Greenbelt into the Open Space Committee. And I also talked to him about potentially coming in and talking with us. He'd be more than happy to. And as opposed to talking about specific properties, maybe just how they go about identifying and preserving properties. But he definitely wants to come in as well. Of course, our calendar's getting full. But they've done some great projects in the very recent past and we have identified with the open space other properties in town that we are jointly interested in.
Yeah, that's important.
That's great.
You can't really do it without them.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to have that.
That sounds like it'd be a very interesting meeting.
The open space was interesting. It seems like we weren't there long enough with him. He was a wealth of information, and especially on the funding side, which the open space really was outside their bailiwick, but it definitely falls within our wheelhouse, and he would be a great source of information on how to go about purchase, conservation restrictions, donations, and what we could do, so.
Yeah, I
If we have a
mean,
meeting there, we can, another meeting
not
date,
to
we
get
can
too
bring him
meeting
in.
happy, but
What is his name again?
Chris Lapointe, he's a Hamilton resident, he's the Director of Land Preservation
Okay.
at Greenbelt.
so,
His name?
Chris Lapointe?
Chris, oh, I thought you were saying Crystal.
No, Chris.
That's what I
It's-
thought too. That's what I thought
I don't
too.
speak
Yeah.
very clearly. Hi,
wait,
Chris
so
Lapointe.
are you suggesting that we have this meeting also in March, or what are you thinking? How would it
He'll
work?
come, he's very flexible, he really is interested in meeting with us and knowing what we want to get out of this meeting.
Okay.
I've suggested several things, and,
Mhm.
again, very happy to come meet with us. We just need to come up with a date and time.
Okay. Do you have any ideas, Jackie, on what would be an optimal time range for something like this? Sounds like we all think it would be a good, worthwhile
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, I think, later on in old business, we'll talk about the community preservation plans more. So I think, we do have this meeting tonight and a meeting on Monday, which is a February meeting. We have a hold on February 12th if the board thinks, if the committee thinks they need it to finish up town meeting business. And that sounds like 2 March meetings. So it might be smart to move into April, because 5 of you still have your commitments to your member boards as well. So I think April, might be,
There's
give
nothing pressing
folks-
with.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
give-
rush.
but it gives folks a little breathing room.
Okay.
April?
April sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the board typically in Wenham has had town meeting season and then has ended rather promptly at town meeting. If you look at the Hamilton CPC website, they actually meet quite frequently.
Oh, they
And so
do?
that's, again, a style choice
And
that
they
folks.
meet year-round?
Not year-round.
Okay.
They start in the late summer because they do have a pretty regular special town meeting in the fall that they have a season for, and then they kind of have the holidays off, similar to you. Do some work in the fall, and then come back in January to prep for the April town meeting. So there's a couple months off, at the summer and the holidays, which makes sense. So that's, something if folks are interested in being more involved with Hamilton, having, taking a more, I don't want to say active because the CPC has always been very active, but having a more, regular, frequent meeting schedule, it's not uncommon for CPCs.
Interesting.
So I'll shoot for April for Greenbelt and March.
Pat, I'll give you the list because you're doing a lot of scheduling and taking that off my plate, which I really appreciate you. But I'll give you the regular meeting schedule for our member board, so that way you've got those in the back of your mind of like nights to avoid.
Perfect.
Provide that to you before you go tonight.
And if we're meeting with Hamilton and Dr. Kuchenberger, is anyone opposed to having the meeting either at the library or at Hamilton's Town Hall as well?
No.
The
Not at all.
library you
Hamilton's
can't
town
be
hall?
on.
You gotta cross that line.
I think,
Mason-Dixon line.
oh boy. If you want to be filmed, Pat, you'll have to be at one of the town halls or at the Bucher School, if that's of interest to you. Something that
Do I want to be filmed?
none of us do, but yeah, recorded. But just something. If you're gonna take that baton, just something to keep in mind.
All right.
Sounds good. Great. Okay, any other project updates? I know that we have discussed, so in the last, in our November meeting, we had talked about a press release. We sent that press release out and it was published. Thank you. That was great. I didn't hear any feedback from anyone. Did you hear anything?
No.
Okay.
Seems like it's gonna be a relatively quiet season,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was in the paper, right? Or
Yeah, it was in
nobody reads the paper anymore.
I know, it's all, yeah.
We did have it on the website as
Should
well.
we have it like on the
Yeah.
Hamilton Wenham Facebook pages or?
It may, I think Diane shared it.
Oh, Diane shares
She
everything.
shared it, yeah. Yeah, and then I think that we had talked also about then moving on to crafting questions for a survey to past clients, for lack of a better word, of the CPC, and I have not drafted those, but I can have them for review or to hand out for consideration on Monday if that's a good time. Is that okay? And then we can at least get that together, and then we can talk about timing to sort of send that out and get some feedback.
And Natalie, if it's of interest to you, we can provide you, we have a lot of interns from Gordon College this semester.
Great.
So if you'd like some help getting, we do have funds in our administrative account that you could set up a Survey Monkey if you'd like to do some kind of online platform instead of just paper
Oh,
copies.
for sure, yeah.
So that's something that we can help facilitate
Yeah,
with an intern,
I know that one administrative need in that project is to just amass a list of all of the clients with their email addresses,
That
the
shouldn't be,
applicants.
we do have pretty good email. We do require it as part of our application.
Okay.
And thankfully, we do have a lot of frequent flyers that we deal with for other town business as well. So that's something we can get for you, but
Okay,
I think that'll be a quick find.
great,
Awesome.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Should the committee submit potential questions just to you, so you can call through them and?
I mean, however you want to do it, I whenever I work with clients that want to do, survey their clients, it's usually no more than 10 questions. I try to keep it to 5, and it's very, what did you like? What didn't you like? What would you improve? What would you like to see that we don't already do? Would you engage with us again? Like, it's just super simple and a way to just get some sort of, I don't know if anybody but if you want something in particular, something you think would be important to add, let me know, or send me an email or whatever, and we can make it happen. And we can always, if somebody decides not to anonymously, respond and wants, we can follow up if we find some feedback interesting, so. But, yeah, okay. All right, okay, staff report, Jackie?
So tonight, it's a very quick staff report, but I just want to go over with you funding for FY21 and what funds you have available as you start to review your applications. This form should look pretty familiar as we go from year to year, but we do have some newer folks, so I'll walk through it. Please stop me if you have questions or if you don't want as much information as I'm giving you. So every year we forecast what we anticipate from the local surcharge, which is what we gain from the taxpayers in Wenham, as well as the state match. I reviewed this with our interim finance director and town accountant Chris Holock. Based on the last 3 fiscal years, we're looking to project a $375,000 surcharge. And based on the state match over the last few years, as well as the legislative changes coming with the Registry of Deeds fees in fiscal 21, we're projecting a conservative 20% match. As folks saw by email earlier in the week, we did get 49.7% this year, which is phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
And many thanks to our legislative delegation and to the coalition for their hard work on that. However, that's was surplus funds in the closeout bill for fiscal 19, so I don't want to get your hopes up too high on what the Registry of Deeds fees will look like on our state match. That will be a permanent increase, whereas this year was a one-time, but we still want to budget conservatively. Better to have to go back to town meeting and ask to reallocate unanticipated revenue than not have enough revenue for what folks would like to allocate money towards. So we're looking at 20%, which would be a $51,000 roughly state match for $426,750 of revenue for fiscal 21. And that gets broken down in a couple of ways. Off the top, $128,000 goes into each, $128,000 gets divided into each of the policy area buckets. So it's $42,675 going into each policy area. Including open space, historic preservation, and community housing. That would allow for $291,225 to go into budgetary reserve. And that's the account that folks may remember that comes up every year. We put money into that account every year so that in the event that the town did have a special town meeting, we would have that money to allocate. And then at the end of the year, it closes out to the CPA general fund. So that would be the budgetary reserve, aka anything we're not directly allocating to something from the new revenue. And then lastly, I've put in a placeholder for $7,500 for administrative appropriation, which covers my staff support time as well as Catherine Tinsley's minutes, which none of us could live without. It also covers our coalition dues, our public hearing notices, and any other small incidental office costs, which are usually pretty low. We usually turn $2,000 or $3,000 back to the fund, but it's historically been $7,500. Just in case, with Natalie's project with the Survey Monkey, we'll be able to use, it'll be a couple, it'll be like $100 to do Survey Monkey for a month or so, like to do the nice one. So, the incidental costs. That's also where we would fund, new signage if that's something we want to proceed with, or we can fund our community preservation plan from that account. So that's just a placeholder for now to give you a sense. And you can see I did attach to your planning document all of the prior year allocations that add up to the $1.1 million that is subtracted from the total CPA fund balance so that you could see what you actually have to spend. So we do have a lot of pending projects right now, but we hope to see some getting closed out this year. And we kind of already discussed that a little bit. Do folks have any questions about the forecasting that I can answer?
Open space holds the bulk of the funds.
At this time, yes, and because we have our viewing public at home, so right now we're forecasting just under $100,000 in the CPA general fund after all of the allocated expenses have been spent. $719,000 for open space in FY21, $42,696 in historic, and $42,675 in community housing, and $291,225 in budgetary reserve. So including that projected fiscal 21 revenue, we would have 1.195,743. So 1
Right.
million.
And just to clarify, open space also includes recreation.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. appreciate that clarification.
Great, thanks, Jackie. All right, and it looks like we already talked about the 5B, right?
Yes, we did. Thank you, Natalie. But March 19th, 7 o'clock, I'll send a follow-up email, and we'll be able to invite Hamilton and any of their staff folks as well. I think it'll be a helpful night.
Great.
Do we have to file that, we'll have to file that as a joint meeting?
We
as
will,
well?
out of caution.
Yes.
Hopefully we won't need it, but just as, whenever the lawyers come in for training, it's always a disclaimer, hypothetical, I'm not your lawyer, this is not legal advice for you, this is a training, but just to be safe, we'll probably do a posting. We'll see if enough Hamilton folks are coming, but if at least 6 of our CPC are coming, we'll post out of caution.
Good.
It's a good point, Pat, thank you.
All right, it looks like we have just number 7 and number 9. So number 7 on the agenda is discussion and potential vote on CPA signage needs for funded projects. So I think back in November, we had some discussion on the need for replenishing the signage that indicates what is a CPC project. There were some comments about the aesthetic quality of some of them. Could they be better? Maybe. I had a chance to talk with Jackie. I think we had a good chunk of time to chat about that, where Jackie had basically, you said that now is a good time to consider that because our coffers are running low. We have how many signs left?
We have 3, and we need at least 6 for all the projects that are gonna get started under construction this year.
Yeah.
The signs stay up during construction and then slightly
Yeah.
thereafter, or?
Yeah,
Go up, they come down, get
Yeah.
more money, they go back up.
But they don't stay up.
it's
right?
not, yeah, they're not forever signs. Like Enon 1 is up now. They'll be finishing up this spring once that installation is done. I mean,
Is that way up? I've never
Yeah, where's
seen
the
that.
yeah,
sign?
it's up there. It's right next to the door. So if you go to check out Enon 1, you can.
Go see it.
You
Yeah.
gotta,
Well, you can see.
Search
I
it.
see it in the morning when I park
Yeah.
my car, but I'm here often, not with a lot of other people in the parking lot.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's actually one of that's one that our facilities director, our former facilities director fixed for us because the post was gone. It just happens, the plow, nature. They're the original signs that the CPC bought when the CPC started giving money to projects. So they're tired. They need a little TLC.
And so what we had talked about was that the woman that is creating the signage for the Enon 1 project, we would talk to her about the process and really just get some information on what the options are. We can look around our options for the design, talk with this committee about what information we find essential to put on the sign. Did we want to put anything special on the sign that sort of reflects the CPA's value of where the funds come from? Do we want to use some space to thank the greater community? All of these discussions. I think today it would have been nice if I would have gotten it together to have met with her and then brought back some feedback. We did not meet yet. So I'm still kind of pursuing that meeting. But do we have a deadline for the need to make a proposal for this, or?
No.
Okay.
The deadline would be that, so if folks were interested in pursuing the signs, what I would recommend is, we do project some extra money towards the end of this fiscal year, so we could do some purchasing in May and June before the year ends. Once we've gotten through the meeting schedule for the year, and accounted for staff time and any other incidentals, we probably will have, a couple thousand left. But it could also mean that if folks would like, we could bump the 7,500 of administrative up for fiscal '21. Maybe $1,000 or $1,500 just to cover the cost of any signs. The CPC can recommend up to 5% of their total revenue towards administrative, which we're not at. So if that's something that folks are interested in, so we could kind of have it, you know, as a two-parter, do a little in, you know, a little in one year and a little in another.
So just because we don't have any, and I know that that's a ballpark figure, but we've not gone out to get quotes on what 20 signs would be, and I don't know if it's gonna be 1,500 or 3,000. I don't know what's reasonable with
Right.
what we want. I don't even know what we want. Can we have time to research that a little bit? I'm happy to volunteer to do some legwork.
So
to
you're allowed to budget for it without getting all the quotes. When we go to buy it, we'll do the procurement stuff, but
Okay.
you can just start to ballpark. You don't need.
What about excuse me, I bit my tongue and I feel like I can't talk. The design of it, because you need to
Yes.
consider all signs that are in the historic district need HDC approval.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a few. I don't even think the cemetery ever got approval. Not that it's way up on the hill. Nobody even knows it's there. but-
Yes, I mean, Tom, what are your thoughts on coming up with a design?
Right.
What would that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd be happy to work on that with you, or with the committee to, I don't, you know, we could look at what the old sign was. Those were done,
Yeah.
I think, just by the vendor who made the signs. And I was thinking about that, do we have a record of where those were made? Because, you know, I think that
Long time
separating
ago.
the design from the fabrication, I don't know, the woman who's doing the Edon signs, what's her role? Is she
Well, Jackie, you know way better than I do.
She's a volunteer who has like done this professionally. She makes like, you know, when you go to like a national park and there's like the interpretive signage that's outside that's like weather resistant.
Yeah.
That's what she like does. So she's working with Enon One to make this decorative signage that's gonna go on the back of the building. So one is
a permanent thing?
yeah, permanent thing. Like they have like a 10-year lifespan based on the material. I know, you know, speaking with the Enon One group, if folks remember, they just did some signage at the Iron Rail property in commemoration of Al Dodge. And if you go take a look at those, they're already starting to fade a little. So that's obviously not something we want to go with. Those are, you know, very beautiful, but they're not they're not
But
weathering
our
well.
signs aren't permanent though, so.
No, but they do live their life outside. Like
10
so,
years?
these ones that we have are over
They're
10
almost
years.
that old,
I know,
yeah.
but, yeah, I mean, I know the one at the cemetery is pretty old because the project has ebbed and flowed, but
Yeah.
typically projects are completed within a year or two.
No, but we reuse the signs.
We reuse the signs
Oh, reuse
over and
the
over.
same signs, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
So,
point,
so
sorry.
that's
I
why
missed
these
that.
have had such a, I mean, they've had a great life for signs, but so it's just about using like this specific waterproof material. So folks, you know, you guys get to really just choose the design, whether it's, you know, you want colorful, you want black and white, you want, you know, an accent color. You know, I think you can kind of do what you'd like, and this volunteer can help, you know, with the graphic design of it. But we have, you know, that's the design piece, and then in terms of the installation, that's really what we're looking at cost, is the cost of the creation and the installation.
Well, I
And-
just want to bring up that there is this thorny issue now of, you know, sustainability and, you know,
Right.
these waterproof signs are often like, you know, heavy plastic material and things like
Yeah.
that, and there's a movement away from that.
So maybe that's not so important to have signs that'll never die.
Well, it could also be a stone. It could be
May I make a suggestion?
alternative.
Can we have this woman come in with some mock-ups of proposed
I
signs,
don't
both
think-
for historic as
Well-
well as for non-historic?
Well, she's a
sites?
volunteer.
And a copy or materials in which these signs could be put on
Bill, I
for us,
think,
for our consideration.
I don't think she is the woman is volunteering to do it. I think I'm volunteering to do the homework. She's more like an expert that would like share her knowledge with us. But I don't think she's willing to put the time in.
Yeah.
I'm willing to put the time in. I think you have a great background in
Yeah, I'd be willing
design.
to-
You're like an authority.
Time on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
But-
there
so I
are
think
plenty of
maybe-
vendors.
I think it
no, I'm fine, you know, just, that,
just
you know,
want-
then I bring up things like, because I complicate it, because I just tried to make some signs for, you know, an outdoor exhibition that had to do with climate change, so we realized, you know, we really can't use plastic.
Right.
We can't use vinyl lettering on aluminum even, so, you know, so it just raises a whole bunch
Yeah.
of issues, and maybe, you know, shorter lifespan,
Isn't so
all
bad.
natural wood sign would be better. You know, I mean, it sounds crazy, but, you know, you can inscribe them with lasers.
I know that the HDC would be much happier with a
Yeah.
sign like that.
Yeah.
So it just, it's another avenue of inquiry, you know.
So would we maybe like to make a mini sign committee where we can meet with this woman and then get her, and then maybe figure out how we want to
Yeah.
document our spec? And then we can maybe send it out to fabricators to say, what could you do in this space? What could you do in that? And then we
Right.
can
Well,
bring them
we have the
feedback.
vendors that we can provide for you. We've got like catalogs that come in. We've got
Okay.
the folks that Bill Tyak uses on a regular basis
Right.
to make those signs
Okay.
as well. So in terms of the finding people to do the actual creation of the signs, that's not as much of a big deal. I would just ask you to consider our wonderful facilities staff when you're thinking of your sign design, because they do the install.
Yeah.
It's not a sign that's a permanent sign, so our facilities folks have to install and install and take out these signs, and they have to be, you know, near to the road sometimes, so they may have some plow. So I just ask you
Right.
to consider, I agree with the sustainability piece, because that's something we have to think about in everything that we do. But I would also ask you to keep in mind our wonderful facilities folks who, you know, don't get any money from CPC that do this maintenance for us as well. Something that, you know,
It's a
is,
huge consideration.
yeah, something that'll stay like clean and not
Yeah.
get too knocked over by a plow if it's too close. You know, just one small consideration for those folks who do that for us.
Yep, right.
Town hall should probably have a permanent sign.
I don't think so.
Maybe on the inside.
$26,000 this
We
year?
got a huge sign right out there right now that is like outrageous that,
No, we can even put it inside the front door.
well, indoors is fine, but I don't
Yeah.
think on the
This building was
street, not in the,
completely haunted by-
Right.
Not in the
No, I think
historic
that's-
district.
That's a really good point, actually, for people to know. And, you know, as-
Hamilton did some lovely permanent ones, Tom, that you sent to me as well.
Well, there's there's a permanent one on the community house.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
But only for.
is it
Hamilton's.
inside?
Outside, only for Hamilton and CPC.
Oh, really?
Well, isn't that nice?
So Tom,
Well,
would
we
you
didn't
be,
provide one.
Yeah,
to
Hamilton
them.
paid for
Yeah.
it.
You have to give it to them, I guess. Maybe
What, we
they-
didn't pay for the sign? Is that what you're saying? Or,
But the Hamilton paid for the sign to have it
Yeah.
installed.
well, they could have asked us. I mean, whatever.
Well, when we show up with a twice as big sign.
Well, they can have all the signs they
money.
want. I'm fine with that. I just want to keep our district nice and clear.
so would you be willing to be a resource on that project?
Absolutely, yeah,
Would
sure.
anyone else want to do that?
I'm happy as
You wanna
for
jump? Yeah.
historic district
Great,
as-
okay.
Yeah, that's a good
aspect.
point.
Great.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess that would be
Committee of
the outcome of this discussion, is that I would love to be part of it too, just
Sure.
to help. Tom, Barbara, anyone else?
I don't think so. I'm very unreliable at
You
this
have too
time.
many,
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll just agree to find a time to, the
Yep.
three of us, to talk about it and
Sure.
then report back in.
Yeah, I'll get Bill, I won't see him tomorrow, but I'll ask Bill to get me the catalogs for you guys of like who we order stuff from, so you can look
Yeah.
at the material, building
Great.
materials and everything.
And then maybe our first thing is meet with, what is her name, Jackie, the woman that?
Leandra.
Maybe we can reach out to
Leandra?
Leandra and say, hey, let's
What's her
meet-
last name?
let's
DeFeo?
meet.
Yeah.
Oh, I know
Oh,
her.
I know her.
She's Catherine Harrison's daughter.
Oh,
Really?
great.
Yes.
Is she?
Okay, such a
Yes, she
village,
is.
such a village.
Yeah, so, but I want to clarify, so you haven't reached out to her yet?
Yes, we've been in touch.
Oh,
by
okay,
email,
okay. I was
but
like,
didn't
before
tell
we
her at a
like,
committee.
before we like,
I didn't,
you know,
like-
let the world know she's gonna help us. I just want to make
Right.
sure you
No,
touch base with her.
She did. We're
Okay,
like
great.
we're
Yeah.
like on the precipice of setting a date.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, by email.
Yeah, great.
But I have not met her yet.
No,
Okay.
she's lovely. She's
Yeah.
very
Okay. So
smart.
now-
Yeah, and does
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I can't wait for folks to see the Enon one signs, because they're
Yeah.
really cool. Like, how does the pumper work? It's really a neat sign. And then one about like all of the history behind it. They're going to be beautiful back there on the on the back side of the building, Barb. So they're out of our historic eye line. But also so folks can walk right up, and
Yeah,
they're going to be very beautiful though.
Great.
Nice.
All right. Thanks. Fun. So I think now we just have the last item: new business not reasonably anticipated by the chair.
I don't think so.
Are there any other groups that we want to potentially meet with? Now that we kind of want to roll.
Yeah, yeah. Might as well just like, I did exchange emails with Stuart, and then Christmas happened, January happened, February is like right there, and it would be me just driving into Boston one day that I have time to literally meet with him. He's super friendly, and he's like, "Come on in anytime." I'm like, "I'm trying." So,
Yeah, super easy.
I'd be willing to go in with you if,
oh, fun.
And
Okay,
he's
great.
who, excuse me?
the head of
The
CP.
CPA.
Oh, the
for-
CPA. Oh,
yes.
okay.
Coalition.
Yes.
He sends all the emails all the time with the updates
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
About-
super
Like our
informative.
mothership almost. Yeah.
Hmm.
But oh, and then
Point about trustees of reservation regarding open space?
a
or
little
is that
bit.
a
Yeah,
non-starter?
we did.
I
I mean, do
believe,
we put them in the same category as the Greenbelt? or-
Yes.
Did Chris even bring them up? I thought,
he didn't bring them up really.
Well, I know
David Santamena, who's also Hamilton Wenham resident.
The farm was purchased, and that was big news. Marie
Green Meadows.
by Green Meadows.
Yeah, not
By
mine.
Greenbelt.
By Greenbelt, and I think that's was the thought, like, oh, if they're purchasing land, we should talk with them too. That is an idea. That's an idea.
So I could reach out to trustees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then we're potentially into April and May.
Right.
am
Here's our
not-
social calendar.
May's gonna be hard for me, I can tell ya. Disney World, here we come.
Oh. Good. Good for you.
Hopefully.
Madam Chair, I did include the meeting agenda for Monday for folks, and I was hoping the FinCom would also like this space on February 12th, so I don't know if the folks feel comfortable thinking about Monday or not, whether or not you feel like that'll be enough time to finalize your recommendations to town meeting, or if you'd like to have that placeholder meeting on the 12th still on the books. Just something I thought I'd ask tonight, but I don't need an answer. But if so, then you may want to prepare yourselves for a slightly longer meeting on Monday if you want to just get it done for the year, or on Monday night make a decision to extend until the 12th. It's up to folks, but I just want to put it on your radar.
Okay.
So Monday, we would have to hear the applicants, and if we're gonna do it all in one night,
Then
then vote on the
debate
applicants.
and vote.
Yeah, which being 3 applications, 2 people.
yeah, it's not,
It's not,
it's not that
Undoable.
yeah,
much.
it's not onerous at all.
Right.
Yeah. So it's up, I might have been a little generous in how much time I've booked, it's really up to, but I wanted to leave room for folks to have questions, and
Yeah.
so just something to consider, in terms of scheduling.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right. Anything else? No. Any?
Oh, no Leo right now, really. Motion to it.
Motion to adjourn?
It's odd to,
Do it.
yeah, it's odd to not have Leo.
It's weird he didn't show up.
Yeah.
Would you like the motion
Anyone
to
hear
adjourn?
from him?
Hope he's
Is he-
okay.
Will.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I move that meeting be adjourned.
A second?
Yay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.